Antony Blinken says Israel get out of Gaza 11 hours ago. The New York Post. Blinken delivers strongest rebuke yet. Let's do this.
Second, we also need to see a plan for what happens after this conflict in Gaza is over. And we still haven't seen that, because what are we seeing right now?
Hang on, let's do a little screen grab. One time for your mom.
We believe two things. One, you have to have a clear, credible plan to protect civilians, which we haven't seen. Second, we also need to see a plan for what happens after this conflict in Gaza is over. And we still haven't seen that, because what are we seeing right now? We're seeing parts of Gaza that Israel has cleared of Hamas, where Hamas is coming back, including in the north, including in Khan Yunis. We look at Rafah. They may go in and have some initial success, but potentially at an incredibly high cost to civilians, but one that is not durable, one that's not sustainable.
Potentially, we're not sure yet.
And they will be left holding the bag on an enduring insurgency, because a lot of armed Hamas will be left. They do in Rafah. Or if they leave and get out of Gaza, as we believe they need to do, then you're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, no matter what they do.
Did Secretary of State Antony Blinken just tell Israel to get out of Gaza publicly on Face the Nation? What a sea change moment. I'm being sarcastic, but look at him licking his lips, talking about how we need to get Gaza open. I mean, closed. This is absurd, right? Oh, I'm still screen grabbing.
Or if they leave and get out of Gaza, as we believe they need to do, then you're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again.
Oh no, not anarchy. He said the dirty A word. So Jeff, I'm struggling to understand where you're coming from when you say that Israel protects civilians and is the most moral army in the world, when the State Department just released a report this past Friday saying that the commission of war crimes by Israel was highly likely. And that's the State Department. The U.S. State Department says Israel has not been protecting civilians in Gaza. But you, most rabid fascist of all fascists, want to get on TikTok and talk about Israel being the most moral army in the world and how it is doing its best to protect civilians. That's not even true according to the U.S. government, which is aiding and abetting. Your favorite little U.S. government is also condemning Israel. You just heard the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, get in front of the camera and tell Israel they need to get out of Gaza. They're not doing enough to protect civilians. You heard Matt Miller, the State Department spokesperson, when this report was released, say that Israel is not doing enough to protect its civilians. How do you continue to lie? Oh, that's right. You're just a spineless worm. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel should get out of Gaza and acted in ways that are not consistent with international law. That's Fortune magazine for you right there. Okay. Seems like by all accounts. Look at this. Fox News, your favorite Fox News. Blinken delivers strongest rebuke of Israel yet. Get out of Gaza. Blinken also directly addressed the U.S. withholding high payload bombs to Israel. Why? Because they are not protecting civilians. It's almost as if the Israeli government is targeting civilians. I love how they say it's indiscriminate. You know, obviously the use of indiscriminate violence is a war crime in and of itself. You know, you can't target a hospital because there's one Hamas fighter there, or even if there's a whole platoon, okay? You can't kill outright, bomb infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, and kill civilians. That's against, I know this is crazy, it's against the law. But to say, where was I going with that? To say that they're indiscriminately killing is being generous. It's not like they've got good intentions and they're fighting evil. It's just like they sometimes make some blunders, okay? The fact of the matter is they are discriminately targeting civilians. They're going after specifically civilians. And here's the difference, okay? Let's just say that you are indiscriminately bombing a hospital, bombing a school, killing civilians, or you are intentionally targeting them. It amounts to the same thing. It's materially the same thing. So you can't claim, oops, my bad. That should have been within your chain of command, a foreseeable outcome to what you were doing. So let's take a specific example. The IDF decides to bomb a school, a refugee school, or UN school at 11 a.m. using a Javelin missile, okay? When they know that a high amount of civilians, students, will be there a certain time of day, right? And they're using a weapon that burrows a crater into the earth. This book goes over it. We should find out what is the impact crater of a Javelin missile or a JDAM missile. It's something like, 100 meters by 25 meters. The point being, it takes out a fucking entire block in some cases. The blast radius can be felt hundreds of yards away. In some cases, it can be felt a mile away. So to use that type of a weapon at that time of day is an act of discrimination. It's discriminating against civilians. You're discriminately targeting civilians. And even if you claim, it doesn't matter what you claim, if you're saying indiscriminately targeting, even if it's indiscriminate, it's still a war crime. But be that as it may, that's not, negligence is not an excuse. Materially, they amount to the same thing. Indiscriminate or discriminate violence against civilians still kills a fuck ton of civilians. If a Javelin missile exploded across the street and hit this building, I might not be able to breathe because my lungs have collapsed, okay? The blast wave is felt. People who say Israel is the most moral army are not arguing in good faith from the beginning. Just go for the jugular with these people, right? I love that you say that and you're in your feelings and you have this vibes-based approach to what is happening in the world, but literally no one agrees with you. No relevant institution, all parties involved, aside from Israel, which wants to claim that it is the moral army of the world, but it also contradicts itself systematically by design when they trot out another fucking minister who admits to these war crimes openly because they flaunt it. They deserve zero respect, absolutely. Dahaya Doctrine and Hannibal Doctrine are quite moral, sir. Yeah, we've talked about the Dahaya Doctrine, literally formally spelled out by former General Chief of Staff for the Northern Command, or if it's the Southern Command, I forget which one. Gadi Eisenkot is his name. He recently lost a son in the war. Lost a son in this genocide. His son was fighting for the IDF. That was a good day when I heard his name come up, and he lost his son. I mean, should we go over what the Dahaya Doctrine is? Look, I've got it right here. The Dahaya Doctrine, Gaza, Norman Finkelstein. I know exactly where it is. It's like in the first few pages. Literally quotes Gadi Eisenkot. Here it is. Okay, after the 2006 war, Israel was itching to re-engage Hezbollah, but wasn't yet confident it would emerge triumphant from the battlefield. So in mid-2008, Israel sought to conscript the United States for a joint attack on Iran. This is a common theme. Israel is trying always to get the United States to attack Iran. I never know how to say Iran. I always say Iran or Iran or Iran so far. I forget how I say it. Sometimes it's different. Just deal with it. Which perforce would also decapitate Hezbollah, Iran's junior partner, and consequently neuter the principal rivals to its regional hegemony. Israel and its quasi-emissaries such as Benny Morris warned that if the U.S. did not go along, then non-conventional weaponry will have to be used, and many innocent Iranians will die. To Israel's chagrin and mortification, Washington vetoed an attack and Iran went its merry way. So they were trying to get the United States to attack Iran. They said, if you're not going to join in, then we're going to do it anyway, and we're just going to use crude weapons, and we're going to kill a lot of innocents. But Washington vetoed the attack. The credibility of Israel's capacity to terrorize had slipped another notch. This is another humiliation. Not only did they lose the 2006 Lebanon war, then they wanted to, attack Iran to make up for it, because it's all about establishing deterrence supremacy for Israel, because they have no legitimate claim to that land. So they must use violence, and they must deter countries from trying to attack them by being absolute savage, murderous, genocidal psychopaths. The credibility of Israel's capacity to terrorize had slipped another notch. The time had come to find a different target. Tiny Gaza. Poorly defended, but proudly defiant, fitted the bill. Although feebly armed, Hamas had resisted Israeli diktat. It says diktat, but it's dictate. Is the same Israeli dictate. It even crowed that it had forced Israel to withdraw from Gaza in 2005 and had compelled Israel to acquiesce in a ceasefire in 2008. So Hamas was proudly defiant. Hamas had even said, they gloated that Hamas had forced Israel to withdraw from Gaza in 2005 and had compelled Israel to acquiesce in a ceasefire in 2008. Gaza was where Israel would restore its deterrence capacity. One theater of the 2006 war hinted at how it might be done. So it hinted at how it might be done. Because after the 2006 war with Lebanon, shamed military officer head of the IDF Northern Command, Gadi Eisenkot, articulated what is known as the Dahaya Doctrine. And the Dahaya Doctrine follows: we will wield disproportionate power against every village from which shots are fired on Israel and cause immense damage and destruction. This isn't a suggestion. This is a plan that has already been authorized. So literally authorizing what amounts to disproportionate violence, which we should also note, okay? The principle of proportionality, okay? The principle of proportionality. Okay, the principle of proportionality, Article 51, this is of the UN Charter, states that even if there is a clear military target, it is not possible to attack it if the expected harm to civilians or civilian property is excessive in relation to the expected military advantage. It's fitting. It's actually very, very incriminating, the fact that Gadi Eisenkot is on record of having used the word disproportionate. That's literally in violation of the principle of proportionality, Article 51. This is one of the most difficult rules of international humanitarian law to apply, as it requires a balance between two factors with little relevance to each other. I'm sure that Israel tries to cook the books as best it can, but there is no justification for it, obviously. Gadi Eisenkot spelled it out in no uncertain terms. So there's 3 quotes here. The first one we just read that outlined the Dahaya Doctrine. Remember, Dahaya is a neighborhood in Beirut, Lebanon. When they were losing this war, they're like, we're going to get Dahaya. We're going to level Dahaya. And then Gadi's like, Dahaya Doctrine, got a nice ring to it. Okay, let's go with that. The next quote is from the head of the Israeli National Security Council, Giora Eiland. The next war will lead to the elimination of the Lebanese military, the destruction of the national infrastructure, and intense suffering among the population, serious damage to the Republic of Lebanon, the destruction of homes and infrastructure, and the suffering of hundreds of thousands of people are consequences that can influence Hezbollah's behavior. She's literally describing terrorism. She's describing international terrorism as a strategic policy for the Israeli government. I mean, this is absolutely insane, folks. What is terrorism? Destruction of civilian life to achieve a political goal, to influence a political party's behavior. What is she saying here? She says the next war will lead to the destruction of homes and infrastructure and the suffering of hundreds of thousands of people, which are consequences that can influence Hezbollah's behavior more than anything else. That's the head of the Israeli National Security Council, Giora Eiland. That's insane. This is the dude that said that. That said, look, we are fucking terrorists. Giora Eiland. Yes, we are international terrorists, and we will openly, proudly proclaim it to the world. Your third quote is from Reserve Colonel Gabriel Saboni. Quote, with an outbreak of hostilities, Israel will need to act immediately, decisively, and with force that is, that magic word, disproportionate. Such a response aims at inflicting damage and meting out punishment to an extent that will demand long and expensive reconstruction processes. And guess what? In the case of Gaza, we'll impede those processes because we'll blockade and institute Bronze Age siege warfare, which is a term I just like to use. Saw it in a tweet once. Okay, there it is. The use of disproportionate force and targeting civilian infrastructure constitute war crimes under international law. Although the Dahaya Doctrine was formulated with all of Israel's rivals in mind, Gaza was singled as the prime target. Too bad it did not take hold immediately after the 2005 disengagement from Gaza and the first rocket barrages, a respected Israeli pundit lamented in October 2008. Had we immediately adopted, they didn't do it quick enough. Had we immediately adopted the Dahaya strategy, we would have likely spared ourselves much trouble. Yes, it's all about sparing Israeli life trouble. This other quote we read, I'm still just like astounded by this, okay? This is Israel's former ambassador to South Africa, Alon. It seems that we Israelis have come to the conclusion that we no longer need peace. Behind the separation wall and with our army's might, we are more or less safe without peace. The economy is growing. Tel Aviv is booming. The occupation is not a source of great moral discomfort to us, except for the minority which does combat military service. The military oppression of Palestinians is out of sight and out of mind. I'll read that again. The military oppression of the Palestinians is out of sight, out of mind for the average Israeli. Many of us tend to believe that the conflict can be managed forever and Israel no longer has a, quote, Palestine problem. That's Alon, Israel's former ambassador to South Africa, okay? The apparent normalization of the occupation assumes a different but extremely compelling form in the Gaza Strip, and that's what she goes over in her book, It's different. It's unique what they do in the Gaza Strip. It's even unique to the subjugation in the West Bank. That's why people have literally written books about this. And to, characterize the policies of the Israeli government in the Gaza Strip, they've had to refer to it as the political economy of de-development, which is a word literally invented because an economist could not find in the economics lexicon a term that would encapsulate what Israel does specifically, uniquely to the Gaza Strip.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Obama gave the orders to do drone strikes.